Hey everyone, it's Ben from Songwriters on Process, and today we have my interview with Nicole Atkins. She has a great new album out called Italian Ice. It's fantastic. This is the second time we've talked. The first time was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And I really enjoyed this conversation. She has a lot to say about just the nitty gritty of the writing process. She talks about her favorite pens she likes to use. She's had the same one for like 15 years. The journals, the notebooks she likes, the types of pens, the type of books, the time of day she likes to write. And she has some great stories also about the songs off the latest album, how they got written. She wrote one in a Shinola store, and she talks about that backstory. But I think the most important thing is she has a great outlook on the writing process and how her writing process is always taking place. And I've always told writers that the writing process takes place when they're walking, talking, sleeping, eating, doing whatever. The actual pen to paper part is just a very, very small part of it. And she has this quote, I think, in the interview where she says, when you're gardening, you're writing. And I love that. And I think she recognizes that the writing process is something that just never stops. And good writers, I think, know that. And because of that, they can get inspiration in a lot more places. I don't think I've ever written a lead, for example, in front of my computer. It's always when I'm doing something else, which is why you always have your phone with you. It's a great way to keep those track of those ideas. I also really enjoyed this interview because Atkins is very expressive. I think we started out the interview in one room, and at some point she shifted. We ended up on the porch. And it's very visual. She showed me her favorite pens, her favorite pencils, journals, notebooks, and she had great stories. And it was just a lot of stuff to see, which I think was great insight into that writing process that you don't just get unless you're doing a video interview. So that was also really cool. So anyway, check out the interview. And I hope you like it. If you have comments, leave them below. Subscribe to the site. If there are people who'd like to see me interview down the road, put those in the comments too. And thanks for watching. I always like to start by asking about the types of writing. And this can be, I'm not talking about just what you've been doing the past couple of months, but
Yeah.
outside of songwriting, do you do any writing? Well, it's journaling, anything like that. What types of writing are you doing, if any?
I mean, I have been known to do a lot of journaling, not so much right now. Like it's funny because it's like when you stop journaling, when you get off of a practice, then when you start to, it's very awkward, even though it's just you and a page. You're
Yeah.
like, I have to break the seal. And like you just write like, this is a nice pen. This is a new pen. This is a big pen. I ate grilled cheese, and then the more and more you do it, the better and easier it gets. But like, yeah, I've always been a journaler and I've always been a note taker. And I write, like, I have lines that'll come to me. So like my like phone or notepads are just full of like one-liners, or like a verse. And
Yeah.
so like when I write songs, I go back to my books and I'm like, oh, okay, this could fit here, or this could fit here. But lately I've been using this app for like the last year that I love called Flow State. Have you heard of this app?
No.
It's great. It's a five, or you could set it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but you have to just start free writing. And if you stop or if you pause to think about it, it erases everything.
Wait, what is it called?
Flow state.
Wow.
And it can be like, fuck, no, I didn't pause, you know? But it's a really great way just to like get out of your way,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like if I have a line in my head, like I'll put it, instead of just writing it down in my notes, I'll be like, okay, I have 5 minutes. I could do a flow state with it, you
Yeah.
know? And sometimes it'll all be shit, but other times you're like, whoa. Then you have something that you're like, this sounds like an LCD sound system song out of nowhere, like it's cool.
Yeah. So do you try to write every day? Is that something that you set aside time to do or maybe make that a part of your day?
No, I don't. I envy the people that are like, yeah, I wake up every day from this time to this time, and I just write and I make things throughout the day, pretty much every day, but like there's no time, it's all just, here or there. Like there will be
Yeah.
days where like, I'll finish a lyric and most of the time will be spent like walking around and worrying about it for 8 hours, and then all of a sudden, right before I go to bed, it's like takes 2 seconds to write, you know?
Yeah.
And other times, I'll just feel really focused and it'll all come in one go. But I do try to draw every day. And I feel like my drawing helps my writing because it kind of like takes away like, when I write a song, I feel like, oh my, like everything this has to mean everything, and then my artwork is just like, this is fun. This is fun for me, so it takes the pressure off the other, and then things are able to come easier.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, the visual art, because I talk to a lot of songwriters who do visual art
Uh-huh.
to varying degrees of success. And some
Yeah.
of them talk about how those two things are separate, where they use the visual art as a break. Others
Yeah.
are talking about, yeah, maybe there are occasional times when I'm drawing and some song idea will come to me. But it sounds like you use it as more of a way to kind of refill the well or get away from the songwriting aspect of it.
Yeah, it's something that I do that just really pleases me on like a sensory level. Like I'll just be like, ooh, like today, like, you know, these are the colors for today. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
the possibilities are endless, like,
right.
and it's just like more like a compulsion. Like I feel like if I didn't draw or paint something that day, that like I missed out on like just feeling really good, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
It's more of like it's a thing that's just like for me. Yeah, I
yeah,
guess how like
yeah.
kids play with slime. Why do they do that? Because it's
Right.
fun, you know? And like doing music is really fun too, and writing music is really fun, but it's not fun all the time. Like it's a compulsion, but it feels like sometimes when you get stuck, it's so painful, like, and it's like, why is this painful? It shouldn't be, but I guess if it was something that, I didn't do for a living, or it wouldn't be as painful, you know?
You mentioned getting stuck. I was going to address that. I don't want to
Yeah.
call it writer's block because I think that,
I mean, that
it's,
is the term,
yeah, but what
but
are,
it does sound like, I feel like that's more for novelists.
yeah, and it just, I think writer's block is just much more daunting of a term.
Yeah.
But are there things that you do when that happens? Do you walk
Mhm.
away? Do you try to push through? Do you go, is that
Yeah.
when you go to the visual art? What are techniques that you use? And, when you're in that songwriting rut?
I never abandon a song. Like if like I have a lot of melodies, like they just come to me, if I'm walking, or even like a lot of them come to me in my sleep, like dreaming, and I'll wake up and I'll be like, shit, I remember that. And that wasn't Elvis Costello singing it. It was my
Yeah.
dream, so it's like free work. That's what whenever I nap, my husband's like, get up. I'm like, I'm working. CR, like, and I was trying to tell my friend that is having writer's block. And he's like, all I want to do is garden right now. And I know I have to finish these lyrics, and I'll sit down and I'll do them. And I'm like, you need to understand that when you're gardening, you're writing. Like, I feel like
So true.
we're, we're never not writing. It's just paying attention to that or not, you know? So be like, I've learned to be like easier on myself, and to, if there's a song that comes to me that like I actually like want to finish and work on, I'll know that even if it's not working now, it's not going to be abandoned. It just might be like put over here for a while if it's driving me nuts, to like be like, okay, yeah, like this isn't working right now. Come back to it. I'll come back to it. But if it's something where I'm like, one, if I'm lonely, I like co-writing because it's like getting to hang out with a friend, but you have a takeaway, or even like now, like I'll have friends, or not now, but back before the plague, I would have friends come over and be like, hey, I got a bunch of paint here. Do you want to come over and like eat food and draw? And they're like, it's so funny because it's like everybody still goes to bars all the time. And like a lot of my friends in Nashville, they're younger, and they're just like, come over and like paint. And I don't paint. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You don't need to. And then they're like, this is so fun. And I was like, yeah, you know. But
Yeah.
one of my friends told me this like a while ago, and I think it's a thing I've always kept in mind. Is my friend is he's a comedy writer for TV. That guy Ken Levine, who wrote like MASH and Cheers.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and he was saying about co-writing, like, whether it's comedy or songs, he's like, sometimes your car gets broken. So you have to call a friend up to give you a lift, you know? So like co-writing is just like if you're stuck, or if you're lonely and just want to hang out, like that's when you call a friend and you co-write. Because
Yeah.
it's almost like when you have a person that you write well with, you know, you can just not be you can get really scared in your own head sometimes when things aren't working, when you're not in that like, you know, trancy zone where it's like everything's just like no 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 no, you
Yeah.
know. You could be like your own worst enemy where you're like, oh, what's the point of even this? Like I
Yeah.
have like second grade reading level, you know, like I don't, but
Right. Right.
at least fourth grade. But
Yeah. 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 So
you know,
I looked at the bio, and first of all, the musicians on on the newest album. I mean, talk about like an unbelievable amount of talent
I know. I
playing
can't
on
believe
it.
they were all available at the same time.
Yeah, I mean the Muscle Shoals connection, right? I mean, I couldn't believe this reading that list.
Yeah,
But I'm glad you brought up co-writing because I was going to ask you about that anyway. Because I've interviewed Carl Broemel twice for my site.
I love him.
Yeah.
He is
Um,
like my one of my favorite people to write with.
yep. So what I'm not going to ask you what it was like because I think that's to write with him because I think that's the kind of you can give me a stock answer. But I guess what did you learn about yourself as a songwriter
Well, you know
by
what's great
writing with
is
him?
like with Carl, like out of, you know, like I've done a lot of work with My Morning Jacket, but he's the one like we've always got along, but he's the one that I knew the least. You know, like I knew Jim really well,
Yep.
Patrick, Tom, but like so when I moved here, I was like, oh yeah, we should, you know, get together and write a song. And I was like nervous at first, but it's like the chords that he plays, like his voicings on guitar are so like those are like the style of chords that I'm so drawn to in the music that I listen to. You know, that kind of like Radiohead meets like 1940s kind of like I don't know what they're called, but I call them the charm chords that, you know, like once he started playing, like I had this idea for the song Mind Eraser. The um, the pre-chorus to me, I thought that it was like a Roy Orbison style chorus. And I thought that was the song. And then he starts playing these Radiohead chords under it. And I'm like, whoa. And then I'm like, that's a pre-chorus. So I just like started singing it and then just like kind of just walked around in a circle like a fly, you know, while he played and just started like free singing. And then he just followed me. And like after like a half an hour, like in this like weird kind of chant trance, we had a song. And he's like, that was really fun. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so like, yeah, it's fun because it's like there's certain people that you can write with that you just kind of know, like you can lose time.
Yeah.
You know, like 2 hours or 3 hours goes away like that.
Yeah. He told me, and I've interviewed him twice. And I think the first
Huh.
time I talked to him, and he told me that when he revises, I asked him about revising lyrics, and he told me that what he'll do is he'll write a line. And if there's a word
Uh-huh.
he's not sure about, he'll write two words above that line and sing the line three different ways. And each
Yeah, I
way,
do that too.
you do that too? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or if
Yeah, so
like I
how does that
have a
help you?
line and I can't find a word, I'll just put like the syllable dashes in it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And just sing through that and see what works the best.
Yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean, because melody always comes first for me,
it
like
does. Okay.
with songs. Like you like I'll just like sing in my phone all the time. And that's why it's like really fun, like, you know, working with somebody like Carl or Moose, Dave Sherman that plays on my record, plays piano, like I can sing them a song, you know, like, and even when it's not just like co-writing with them, but like, hey, I'm going to send you a song. Like, can you just play the chords under it? You know, and I know how to play guitar, but I just know that they know a more special way to play it,
Yeah,
you know, because I can sing it on key without music.
yeah,
So it's just better because it leaves it more open.
yeah,
Like that's where you can get like I have a lot of fun with arrangements. You know, like I like writing arrangements just as much as I like writing like a melody and a verse, you know. But because it's just like I don't know, it's like you see through like all the layers and hear the whole song in your head sometimes right when it comes out and you're like, "Oh." And like being able to have friends like that you could sing the parts to and they're just like, "Oh, you mean this?" And you're like, "Yes." Like
right. Yeah, that's got to be real. I'm sure that's a great feeling to have those people to
it
give you
is.
that, that feedback.
Yeah, even like with like the string players on the record, like I'm like, can we get together for like we did all the strings in 2 hours.
Oh,
And it was the
wow.
cellist and the violinist. And I sang them the parts. And I was like, because there's some musicians that are really schooled with like theory and stuff. And they're like, oh, that's a seven doesn't fit over the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. But in my
Right.
head, it does and it will, and you find your people that don't care about that stuff. But when they started playing it and it worked, and like granted, there's times where it's like, no, that's stupid. Okay, try this instead. But when it worked and you hear it all come back and you're like, oh my God, like it's the
Yeah.
best feeling.
Yeah. Going back, you said something really interesting, and I used to teach, I have a PhD in English literature, so I used to teach
Mhm.
on the college level. And
You're the second
I told
English
my
doctor
students,
I've talked to this week.
what's that?
You're the second doctor I've talked to this
Oh,
week.
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Um, and
talked to Doctor History.
you said something that I thought was really interesting, and I agree 100%. That is
Uh,
that people make the mistake of thinking the writing process takes place when they sit down to write and it ends when they stop writing. But your
yeah.
writing process, and I always told my students this, is always taking place when you're eating, when you're walking, when you're
Uh-huh.
sleeping, when you're doing nothing. And I think that's the mistake people make, is they don't realize that's the part of the process as well. And I was reminded of that when I heard an interview with Don Henley, and
Uh-huh.
he said that you'd be surprised how many songs came to him when he was loading the dishwasher.
Oh,
And
those are the times when they come is like, like when I'm like walking or showering or cleaning. I think when you're in motion doing a repetitive thing, that's a really great way I mean, you don't think I'm going to go do this and write, but like
yeah,
pay attention because when you're doing something repetitive, it leaves your mind free to wander and things might fall out of it,
yeah, I
you
wonder
know.
why that is. I mean, do you think the repetition? Because I interviewed a songwriter once who told me that he wrote all of the songs on an album on a hike, and realized that the songs, after he listened to it, the songs often correspond to the cadence of the hike that he was on. Um,
Interesting.
so
Was it Ben Sollee?
no, it was Adam Turla from the band
Oh,
Murder by Death. Um,
okay,
and
cool.
and I've heard people talk about the role of motion, how just being on
Yeah,
on a train or on a
on a
plane or in
train.
a van, just seeing
Hmm.
things go by. My God, I interviewed James McMurtry, and he told me, how many songs come to him in those situations.
Most of my songs were written on New Jersey Transit because it's like when you're sitting still in motion. It's
Yeah,
like I think a lot of I mean I'm very ADD and I think a lot of writers probably are ADD, so it's kind of like it fills up those synapses of like stimulation where it leaves another part of your brain like able to focus because all the shit's going on over here and
yeah.
you're just like
So do you think it's then do you think it has anything to do with the rep? So you think it has to do with maybe the stimulation of things that you're seeing, or possibly if you're on a train, the monotony of the clacking or something like that?
maybe like I just think yeah there's like a fast picture moving
Yeah,
by that I think it just takes up an energy or a space in your brain where like this is busy over here so you don't need to be busy in here but you could be zoomed in,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know like it's like you're locking into like a space in your brain without trying
yeah.
because it's like I feel like when you try that's nothing happens then.
Right.
Or it will maybe once in a while, but like, yeah, that's what I was trying to tell my friend. Like, anytime I've ever said, Sunday, okay, Sunday's the day, I'm gonna sit at my desk, like Nick Cave, and like
Right. Right.
take my hours. And whenever I do that, I end up like fucking organizing my sock drawer and
Right.
like,
Right.
like alphabetizing my record collection, like,
Yeah.
and then feeling like shit. So I think like the more that the more that I've realized that, like, there's a reason I don't sleep at night sometimes because I'm sitting putting melodies in my phone. Like, I'm never not writing.
Yeah. I
Like,
think that's crucial. That's what people need to understand, is that that's not a wasted time. Um,
yeah,
you
no,
know,
everything you do is time well spent. But
yeah.
I think
Uh,
there is a line though. Like, say, like, you know, you spend 5 months to make a record that you've already been spending money on and there's a deadline. Like sometimes you do have to say like, okay, put the video game controller down
Right.
and finish your song. And if you can't finish it yourself because you're too in your head, you got to phone a friend. You just got to get in the mode.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like once you can get yourself in the mode, you know, that's what, like a lot of friends I know, like they have, oh, I don't want to co-write because I don't want to share my publishing or whatever. But it's like the one song that you might write with somebody else might keep your brain in that zone that you might write 4 times the amount of songs that you were going to write rather than that one song on your own.
Yeah, it gives you more ideas, right? I would
Yeah,
imagine.
totally.
Um, yeah, I think that's, and I read an essay, it must have been about 10 years ago, that guy that created Dilbert, I think his name is Scott Adams, and he talked about how
Uh-huh.
boredom was a necessary component to creativity. I think that's what we're talking about. He said,
Yeah.
you know, that when you're on the couch staring in space doing nothing, you know,
Hmm.
that boredom, we need boredom to create. And that's the problem with, you know, not to get, you know, not to make this a discussion of, you know, the overwhelming stimulation of the internet and anything like that, but the fact that
Yeah.
we don't have as many moments like that now, and so that's why
Yeah.
it may be harder to create.
Yeah, I think though, even though with the internet though, like it's not like, oh wow, yay, wow, yes, you know, like it is
Yeah,
kind of just like na 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 na, na. You
yeah,
know, it's not like thrilling entertainment,
yeah,
but you know, it still is a pretty being home all the time. It is a boring time, but I think that that is kind of the best
yeah,
because like making something out of nothing is like that's my natural thing to do. Like my
yeah.
mom said, like even about my Saturday show, she was like, you know what? Now I don't feel bad for raising you as a bar baby. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you know, when you were little, like you and your sister, we'd be at the bar with our friends and you'd be with the couple kids that were there and be like, we want to go home. And we'd be like, no, we'll go home when we say we go home. And she's like, and then all of a sudden you'd have your sister on your lap making her a marionette puppet and then passing a tip jar. You know, like
Yeah,
you've always been doing this.
pretty
So,
handy, totally.
yeah, yeah,
um
funny.
So I'm very interested in the rituals of writers and songwriters.
Hmm.
You know, are there certain, when you sit down to write, are there certain things you need to have with you? Maybe a certain time of day, certain room. You know, I find that I know that there are certain rooms in the house or places or times of day that are I'm at
Hmm.
my most effective, and I think it's an
Optimal.
element of making me confident, knowing that things will come. You know, I interviewed the John Darnielle from the Mountain Goats, and I think he told me he
Uh-huh.
wrote the last out two albums ago on the dining room table because that's where the mojo was, and he knew
Yeah,
that.
sometimes you do find like a mojo spot, you
Yeah,
know, but sometimes you'll go back thinking that's the mojo spot and then be really frustrated with yourself because it's not anymore, and you're like, I don't know, you
yeah,
know. But I mean, I always keep a notebook on me. Like I'm a big fan, more so not of like what am I gonna write this on, but like what pen am I gonna use?
yeah.
I like
Well,
if I have a good mojo with a pen, that pen is the pen. You know, like I actually started, I haven't kept up with it, but I started an Instagram page called Sick Ink Bruh about about pens.
okay,
Like
so we need to collaborate on this because I have told people that I could start a website
on paper.
dedicated only to the loyal devotion that songwriters have to their ink type, the type of pen, and the brand. I
Yeah.
mean, this, I was going to ask you this anyway, but I
Yeah.
had no idea this was such a thing that people are
I didn't
devoted to only certain types. Not only that, but even certain types of paper, certain places
Oh,
that they go
I
to.
found my paper block that I
Let's
love
talk.
now.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
telling you, you got to go to my website and you'll see all of these. The answers are fascinating.
Ooh,
Um,
you know what you should do is like you should have like a stationery shop link on your I mean 5%,
that's
5%.
that's right, exactly.
But like no, seriously, like
Yeah.
or if you had like, you know, like just like fucking what are those things called? Links.
Yes, links.
Like if you had a link where it was like the goods and you just
I
had
know.
like, you know, like a link to everybody's pen that they like or pad.
Yeah.
So the pad that I love and
Yes.
please hold. So I'll write my lyrics on like crap, like I'll write them on like shitty paper.
Yeah.
But then like if I start to get the song halfway done, where I'm like, okay, it has bones, I'll I just ripped the cover off of this
No,
one.
that's fine.
Put it somewhere, and I don't know where I. Oh wait. So when it's like in a good spot that I'm like, okay, I have to commit to this. Now I will write it on the expensive paper that I love.
Gotcha. Okay.
Tyke and
Perfect.
block.
Perfect.
Like the weight of it, like the feel of it, it's just like, oh, it's like a cashmere blanket.
Yeah. But when you
And
first start, it's the shitty paper.
yeah, when I first start, it's like Post-its
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
phone notes and just everywhere. And then like, so I guess that is one way that it's like, okay, the times that I will sit down and write is when I have to gather all my scraps
Yeah.
and organize them and be like, okay, this goes here, this goes here. Oh, here's the story.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I'll like, or I'll get this pad out, and that's one of my books that I like to
Yeah.
write in. And it's just like this is like, whoa, it's so smooth.
So
And
wait,
like
what stage is that? What stage is that paper then? That
this, the same. Once all the notes are like
okay.
hunted and gathered, then they get put down on the
Yeah.
nice paper.
No, I
So
mean, I think it was Hayes Carl told me that he has to go to Staples. It's got to be only yellow legal pads from Staples or something like that.
I remember like reading about like the yellow legal pad. It was like I think a Jeff Tweedy thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to do that. I'm only
Yep.
going to use yellow legal pads. And then I start using them and I'm just like, oh, they're not pretty and the paper doesn't feel nice, but I do write a lot of scraps on yellow legal pads, or like if somebody comes over to co-write, I always, it's weird because it wasn't conscious, but I always end up writing on the spiral, the orange cover Rhodia pads.
Yeah.
That's like always my co-writing thing. So I'll like
Really.
open it up and I'll be like, what the fuck is this? And be like, oh, that was when like, this R&B singer came over, you
Yeah.
know? So, but there are like books that are like, these are my songs. These
Yeah.
are ones I've co-written. These are like my like ideas for a musical, or like I have a book that's like scenes from a movie.
Now, do you actually, before I ask about the pens, it's funny now that you mentioned this, it seems like the I guess my generalization would be that the songwriters who are also visual artists place more emphasis on the type of paper they write with. Now that you're talking about this, it seems like those
That makes
songwriters
sense.
who also like to draw or paint
Mm.
are the ones that talk about the feel of the paper more.
And I think it
Um,
might just be because we know it's out there.
yeah,
Like Hayes probably hasn't been to a Dick Blick.
yeah,
It would blow his mind. Staples,
right.
I hate going there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, what about pen? We did talk about pens.
So with pens, okay, let me see. No, it's not in here. So this is one that's great. I've had this pen for like 15 years. It's it's a Stabilo point ball,
Okay.
and it's
Well,
just thick.
color, does color matter?
Color, yes. It has to be black
Why?
because blue ink is for high schoolers.
um, that
And
yes, I
I
can't argue with that.
also I also love a good gel pen, like
Okay.
a jelly roll.
Yeah.
And then this is my like favorite discovery of the year. It is I bought like a huge box of them. They're called Pentel Stylos.
Ah, okay.
So see that? Like it writes like a pencil,
Yeah.
but it's ink and it's
Yeah.
really thin and it's wonderful.
But doesn't that go to the confidence element? I mean, again, like I think if I know you could write if I
Mhm.
gave you this pen, but you
Yeah.
probably yeah, but I think for me there's that level of comfort that you think, all right, I've got that pen that at least I know that I'm going to be in a better space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing, but also it's like, I could go outside wearing like the same jeans and blank t-shirt every day.
Yeah.
What would be the fun in that when there's
Yeah.
so much, like fancy stuff you
Yeah.
can do,
Yeah.
but other times too, though, like, I mean, like when I have to like do a lot of like focused songwriting or even like production work or arranging work, I'll wear like a very blank uniform or a suit. Like I
Hmm.
feel like clothing comes down to it too. Like I write a lot of songs with Jim Sclavunos from the Bad Seeds, and I remember being like, Jim, do you ever not wear a suit? Like, is there ever casual gym day? And he's like, no.
Really?
And he's like, because I'm always working,
Yeah.
so I approach every day like I'm getting ready for work and I feel
Yeah.
ready. It makes
Yeah.
me feel like ready. So it's like when I kind of like adopted that, like it's like if I'm gonna be songwriting or in a studio, like leading a bunch of musicians, like I need my work outfit on so I can like remember when I feel like, oh, I'm tired. No, you're not. You're at work, you know?
Yeah. I've
But
never heard
that's
that
only,
before.
I
That's
feel like that's only when it involves other people,
okay.
you know?
So that's when you're co-writing. So by yourself, the clothing isn't
Yeah.
as important.
No, unless I'm having like a really like mentally struggling day,
Yeah.
then it's like I'll put on an outfit that might change my mood.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned, do you have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. You mentioned earlier all the notebooks. Do
Mhm.
you feel these notebooks, I imagine, are somewhere, right?
They're right
Um,
in front of me. I'm looking at them
yeah. So do you ever go back to those if you
all
find
the
that,
time.
yeah, you do?
Yeah.
And are
And
there
sometimes
lines in
not
there?
even
What do
when
you,
like I'm writing. Like sometimes I just like to be like, hold on, I'll just like grab one.
yeah.
Um, Actually, this is actually a good story about this one. So this is a Shinola notebook,
Yeah.
and the song "Goodnight Rhonda Lee." I didn't have words for it the day before we went to record. I played at the Detroit Institute of Art and in Detroit, and went to the Shinola store because it was like we sell notebooks and coffee, and I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'll go there and try to write the lyrics to "Goodnight Rhonda Lee." And because I had the music and I had the melody, and the I wrote that song with Chris Isaac, and the chorus kept saying like that we came up with was say goodnight, say goodnight, say goodnight, say goodnight to the band, and I was like, what does that mean? Like say goodnight to the band. Is
Yeah.
this like a, like closing time type song? And then I was like, I was gonna call the record, This One's for Rhonda Lee. But then I just like in my head I was like, say goodnight, Rhonda Lee. And I was like, ooh, that's the name of the song. And then I bought the notebook and I was like, if I buy this pretty notebook, I have an hour left here. I'm gonna write the words. And then they were like, would you like a free embossing stamping on your notebook? And I was like, sure. I'm like, can you write Goodnight Rhonda Lee? And they were like, it's kind of long. And I was like, please, because I think if you do it, it will make sure that I write the lyrics to this song right now. And they're like, okay. And they did it. And I wrote the lyrics in a half an hour. It was just like, blah.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was almost like a personal thing. It's like, it's written on the notebook. You just liked it in your head. Don't think about it. Just do it right now. You
Yeah.
know? So
So,
I think that's the thing. It's like kind of following that, like almost like Celestine prophecy, like type thing. Like, look what's in front of you that has been presented. Now go with it and don't think about it.
right.
You know.
So you started that song with the title then, sounds like?
No, we started it with the melody
I
and
mean,
these
I'm
words.
sorry, the words. The words started with the title.
Well, no, the song was like, I see you. It was words and a chorus that I didn't
Oh, okay.
understand. Like it was, I see you laughing, but you're laughing too loud. And then I tried to find you. You were lost in the crowd. And then say goodnight to the band. So I kind of felt like it sounded to me like sometimes when you co-write, you're not on the same page, although you can write like the melody was good and the chords were good. But it sounded like I was kicking somebody out of my dressing room. And I thought that was kind of mean. So I was
Yeah.
like, I don't understand this. And then when I put Rhonda Lee in place of the band, I was like, oh shit, this sounds, I could write it. And it just came out like, you're laughing, but you're laughing too loud. And I just thought about me, like, being the drunkest person in the room, being like, with all my friends, being like, shit, she's turned,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
running away with strangers and like kind of like I don't know, it just came really fast.
Yeah. When those songs come that quickly, do you not mess with them? I mean, you feel like if it came in a
No.
half hour, I'm not going to touch it. That's the final product.
Yeah, I mean, there might be like a word or two that you're like,
Yeah.
oh, now I have one better. But it's like those things happen not very frequently.
Yeah.
And when they do, it's awesome. And sometimes you worry that they'll never happen again, but th they always do, you
Yeah.
know.
I don't think you, I'm not sure if we talked about this, but time of day, is there a time of day when you tend to get your best writing done, or are you pretty flexible with that?
I think like early mornings, which don't happen often for me.
Yeah.
So like that time in between waking up, sleep and waking up, that's when like my brain is still sitting kind of like on the, the dream plane and things will
Yeah.
happen there. So that's always a good time. Um, I think that really late at night is always a good time, but like
Yeah.
I can't say like I mean I wrote, one of my favorite songs like in the middle of the day, you
Oh,
know.
okay.
So I feel like any time is a good time,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Anything
So
you have to have with you? We mentioned the paper, the pen. One songwriter recently told me she likes to have flowers next to her at a table. Any of those things that you need with
really?
you, or
See, I feel like I don't need anything with me. Like
yeah,
even the books and the pens, but the books and the pens are the ways I treat myself.
yeah,
Like it's where it's like, okay, I'm gonna write with, in this book with this pen, and that makes it official,
yeah,
but all the writing that happens, all the work is done freestyle on scraps on everything.
yeah, yeah. So those scraps are so your songs pretty much start with a bunch of post-it notes. It sounds like.
Yeah, like it's funny because like my record, was it this? Yeah, this record before I started it, my parents were away, so I went to their house in Jersey, and it looked like a crime scene. I put like
Oh,
post-it
really?
notes
Yeah,
all. They have like this mirrored wall, and I put like all these post-it notes of like songs that are written, songs that are half done, songs that I want to write that might be like
yeah,
awesome. It was just like this map, and I was like, okay. But all I did was spend time making this big map. And I didn't spend any time like writing. And then I started writing songs that weren't even on that thing. But at the end of the day, like I saw like shit, I have way too many songs to even pick from. So that
yeah,
was when I sat down with Ben Tanner and was just like, let's listen to all this shit and put it like in a yes, maybe, absolutely not,
yeah.
you know?
Why do you think? Because with technology, especially, I'm old school like that, but I think that's
Hmm.
tends to be the minority view that people are writing things. It's easy to put things in your phone, anything like that. That's not
Yeah.
the answer I typically get. So why do you think that that's a more effective way for you in that first part of the process than just doing it on a laptop?
I mean, I do things on laptops too, but it's like if it's on the laptop, it's also going to be on the paper,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's like I think laptops or phones are for functionality or if it's all you have, but I just like, the tactileness
Yeah.
of like materials or like a big thick pencil,
Yeah.
it's just like it's satisfying,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
also, I think you can see those things. I mean, you can see all of those post-it notes. They are literally within your field of vision if you're looking at a
Hmm.
wall, right? But on a
Yeah,
phone, they're not there.
but then after I like organize those post-it notes and then put them in a book,
Yeah.
I throw those post-it notes away because it's like they were the cause of all of my stress for the last few months of are all
Ah,
bits of paper. And then once they're in the book, it's like, okay, now this is your document. This is your, treat. This is the thing you'd save from a fire burning in your house.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. So do you go back then? So those are I think you said you are kind of going back to those notebooks sometimes if you do, looking for lines. Are you doing a lot of mixing and matching? Like, you got a melody, what lines might
Yeah.
go with that melody kind of thing?
Sometimes, like I always like write everything down thinking like, okay, now I'll put those to that, but then once the melody starts, and I'll be like, it sounds like I'm saying this. What does that mean? And
Yeah.
then I'll go with that, and follow that as far as I can. And sometimes I'll get the whole narrative. But then if I get stuck, like I remember right before this album, um, there were a few songs I didn't have lyrics for, and I was stressed and I wasn't sleeping. And Jim Sclavunos lives in London, and so he'd be awake, because it's like morning
Right.
there, and he'd be like, "Do you write things down in like books or in your phone?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I've got shit tons of things written." He's like, "Well, that's your work. Why don't you go through all of them
Yeah.
and like see if anything fits?" And I was like, "Duh." Like sometimes you forget, even though you do that all the time. But I was like, oh, wait, yeah. And then, but sometimes, like all of those things, like that you write down, they might not be for what you're working on now.
Yeah.
That they'll be it's almost like you're making your own reference library, you know? But
Yeah.
I remember like the song AM Gold, which is the first song on the new record.
Yep.
I wrote the music for that 6 years ago, and I
Oh,
loved it
wow.
so much. Like I heard it so big in my head. But the guitar line that Binky's doing in the chorus, that dun da 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 da, I always thought that was the vocal melody. So I just like everything I came up with that melody was like really corny and like no no no. But it was the first thing we recorded because I was like, this song is going to be the first song on the record. And they're like, well, what's it about? I'm like, I don't know yet, but it's the first song on the record because it sounds like a first song on the record. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until the last day of fixing any overdub stuff that I went to sleep with the news on. And I took way too much like NyQuil Z that I had like jumpy leg all night. And so in my like NyQuil Z CNN blowout phase, like I had like all of a sudden it was just like in my dream, but it was like we're stranded in the garbage of Eden. We're starving what we should have been feeding. Like just like the whole chorus came, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you have to get out of bed and write this down, and it's written down like barely legible. And the next day, I was like, all right, Ben, I'm gonna sing this. It worked out perfect in my dream, but I don't know if it's gonna work. And I did, And then he's like, whoa. And he's like, that's awesome. And I was like, yes. And so it happened right at the very last moment, but it took years.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Even
6 years. I mean, that's a long time to wait. That's a lot of patience. You
yeah.
know.
Well, the thing is, it's like you're constantly writing new songs, but like that melody, that dun da 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 da,
Yeah.
never left my head. But it's
Yeah.
funny because in the studio when we were doing just the music, I realized I was like, shit, Binky, this is a guitar melody. This isn't a vocal melody, you know? But then I was like, shit, I'm giving away the cool melody to somebody that's not me, you
Right.
know? But it was the right thing to do because it like got out of the way to like
Yeah.
be able to finish the song.
Yeah. That's a great story. Okay. Two more questions. First one, I want to
Yep.
go back to the beginning of the interview and you mentioned free writing.
Uh-huh.
When I was in graduate school, free writing was the big thing. It was, you get your students to free write and, on pen and paper, at least, you free write for 5 minutes. The key is the pen never stops moving. And if you can't think of anything, you literally write, I can't think
I
of
can't think
anything.
of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I read something though that said that they're not doing that as much anymore because what they found was the students were not getting better ideas. They were just getting a greater amount of really crappy ideas with the free writing.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm not saying that. So I'm curious, but it sounds like it's really effective for you. That what do you find effective about that
Well,
type of writing?
I think out of every like 10 free writes, there might be one
Yeah,
good thing or there might be one good line in each.
yeah,
But I just think like, yeah, it's like the more things that you throw at the wall, the more chances of having an idea you have,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And I think free writing just gets you in a routine,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So it's not, I don't know. I kind of think that like that research is wrong.
yeah,
Like it's like
yeah,
journaling. Once you
yeah,
stop journaling, you get entries like this is a new pen,
yeah.
you know? But it's weird because like since this lockdown, like I don't know, like have you been having like crazy dreams?
Um, I don't know if it's crazy dreams, but definitely my sleep pattern is affected. I find
Oh
myself,
yeah.
it's harder to sleep through the night.
Yeah. Mine is like I mean, I stay awake till like forever.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
I I don't know, but I'm been dreaming so heavy. I had this dream that like I was in love with this person that I'm totally not in love with. Like I'm very happily married, but in this dream, this person was just like my like, you know, this giant heartbreaking romance. And I woke up like so heartbroken, like just affected me all day. And I like told my husband about it. I was like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Like I'm having dreams about blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
like I feel heartbroken.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how do I not feel this way? Because it's fucking up my day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, I should write about it. You know, like, and I was almost like, or I was like I wrote this like really like painful song called I Want You, you know, and it was just like, oh, cool. I get to like visit these feelings that I haven't had in a while, you know, like because I'm happy. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool that you can use these like, you know, dream or pain that's delivered in your dream to like make something out of it. You know, it's
Yeah.
like play. But like it was
Is
like physically hurting me, you know?
Yeah. Well, is pain an easy place to write from? I mean, I've had, gosh, I've, again, like I'm going through my interviews and I remember Carl, no, not Carl, Carl Newman, yeah, from New
I
Pornographers. He
love
told me,
Carl.
he told me he just, there's a certain point at which you're so sad or you're so upset that you can't write because
Yeah.
it, that you can write, there's a certain amount of sadness up to a point that you can write with. And after that,
Mhm.
it's just not possible. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, is
I
there an
find it a
ideal
lot
emotion?
easier to write when I'm not in pain. You
Yeah.
know, like, I mean, that was like fake pain. I mean, it felt physical and real, but I was
Yeah.
like, okay, dude, it's a dream, you know? But when you are like just really like in this just like horrible depression or like emotional turmoil, like I always thought like, yes, I'm an artist. This is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then this record, it was the first record I realized that I made that wasn't in a time of hardship for me.
Yep.
It was like in a time of like thriving, you know? And like we even like after every night of the sessions, we were like, is this as good as we think it is? Because like it's fun and it's just really easy. So maybe it's shit. And we're like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. You know, like you can make things that while enjoying yourself that aren't like, yay, you know, like they can still be deep,
You
you
know,
know?
I interviewed Jim James about a year ago, and it was really revealing because he talked about how we need to, as artists need to get rid of the tortured artist myth. That you
They
need
do.
to be suffering, that you need to suffer in order to create. Now, his idea was much more in that big picture kind of, let's talk about mental health issues.
Hmm.
Why is it that we think that you've got to be in that place of misery or pain? He really talked a lot about getting rid of that, dispelling that idea that you don't need to
Yeah.
suffer to create.
You don't. You don't. Like I remember, like I met Bruce Springsteen when my first record came out, and he was so cool. You know, like we're both from Asbury, and he's just like
Yeah,
he was the man. He was just like, "What's up? You want some
right.
shots?" I'm just like, ah, and he was like, he's like, if I can give you any advice, he's like, you don't need to suffer to make good art.
Great. Yeah.
And I was just like, I know. I didn't know, but I was
Yeah.
just like, he's like, and then I read his book and I like realized that
Yeah.
he like struggled a lot with depression. And it's like,
Yeah.
I've struggled with, you know, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, like all of these things. And like, I've noticed like since I, you know, addressed the alcoholism and the depression and the anxiety, like, and I still, you know, they're things that I have to like do to like keep them down, you know, but since I've really like actively done that, my creativity's just been awesome. Like it's not something I have to do, it's just
Yeah.
something that I am
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
something I do, you know.
Yeah. He really talked about in a bigger, like we were talking about, you and I, like you just mentioned, really much more of a bigger industry wide kind of, not just industry, well, writers as well,
I
novelists,
also think
playwrights.
too, like the generate, like me and Jim are the same age, and like we
Yes.
grew up in the '90s where like being sad was really cool, you
Right.
know, like everything was like emotional pain, and it's like, dude, if you're happy about something, you're not cool. Like
Yeah.
being happy wasn't cool, and that like is like the biggest myth ever. Or it's
Yep.
just like being cool is just being cool, you
Yeah.
know, like being like depressed and sad sucks,
Yeah.
You know, and I think too,
Um,
like the older you get, the more you realize that too.
that's true. Okay, last question. So I find that songwriters are voracious readers.
Uh-huh.
And I forgot what your answer was last time we talked, but how much reading do you get to do? Are you reading anything right now? Who are some of your favorite writers?
I never really learned to read. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know how to respond to that. That was going to be a
I
really
just wanted to
awkward
see what
moment.
you
Have you,
do.
I know, I don't, yikes.
Um, I'm actually reading Mark Lanigan's biography right
Oh,
now.
you are? That just came out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Sing Backwards and Weep.
yeah,
And that I love Mark Lanigan so
yeah,
much. And like mostly like his lyrics too. Like he's just got these lines sometimes that are like one long season of rain, I will
yeah,
remain thinking of you. And it's just like that's so like classic and beautiful. And then his voice sounds like, you know, Sinatra in an alleyway,
yeah.
you know, chipped up Sinatra. And so yeah, I'm like just at the start of that now. And again, it goes back to the 90s. Like, you know, you wish that someone like I mean, you don't I think everything happens for a reason. You
Yeah,
know, like you go through things so you can get to the other side of them. If hopefully you make it to the other side of them. But
yeah,
you know, and you don't regret the past. But there's certain people that you know them, and then you're reading all these sad stories about their life, and you're like, man, I wish they had it easier.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Do you get to read a lot of fiction, or you got, do you like a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
the
all over
rock
the
bios?
place. I'm trying to think. Like, I haven't read a really good fiction book in a long
Oh,
time.
really?
Mm-mm. Because I was just so busy. Oh, you know what? I did revisit, and this is a book that there's two books that I do always read when it's like album mode time. Is A Night of Serious Drinking from Dumas.
Okay.
Have you read that?
I'm not.
It's a quick read, and I think you'd love it.
Gonna
It
write
was
that down.
written in 1946 by a guy that used to like ingest gasoline. But he was a French writer, and the book is a writer writing about being an alcoholic writer
Oh,
and the
wow.
bar that
Okay.
he hangs out at.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, this guy has a rhyming dictionary and a book on the occult, and he calls himself a writer. And I was thinking like, this is 1946, but it's like, yeah, that's like the bar in Nashville. Like,
Right.
look at how deep I am with my witchcraft book and my rhyming dictionary,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know. But he talks about all of these crazy personalities that are at the bar, and they're all writers and artists. And he's like, oh, disgusting. Life is disgusting. He's like, but I'm so thirsty. Every paragraph like ends with I'm so thirsty.
Yeah.
And like it's the kind of book that you could just open it from any point and just be like, oh, like and get some inspiration.
Oh, cool.
That and the book, the Bridge of San Luis Rey.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, I love
Who
that
wrote
book.
that? Um, who wrote that? I forgot. That's
Um, Borg, no, I don't. It's on my shelf.
yeah, we'll figure it
But
out.
those two books are books that I go to like get into that little, you know, otherworldly mind zone to write, and they're also books I always give away to writer friends when they're like,
Yeah.
hey, I gotta make a new album. I'm like, here,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Cool. Well, great. Listen, thank you very much for taking the time to
Yeah,
talk to me.